Cool. Thanks. I haven't heard this talk either. It's very, very unprepared. So, okay, so just to introduce myself, I am the head of UX at an agency called design agency called Make Rain. My background is that I studied anthropology and by accident discovered that UX was the perfect place for an anthropologist. And outside of my day job, as Iggy mentioned, I co-direct an organization called She Can Do, where we aim to, our mission is to basically empower women who are trying to break into the UX and design industry or advance in their careers. So basically, let me explain this title. This is all too much. I want to take you back in time about 18 hours ago, where I'm sitting at my laptop. I've got hours and hours and hours of worth of material to talk about. I could probably write a PhD, my memoirs, several biographies, a handbook on ADHD life hacks, compilation of cool design things and fun facts about ADHD. But I was sitting in front of a bunch of empty slides. And so no problem. I kicked right into gear. I polished up a perfect TED Talk worthy presentation. I practiced it, I timed it. I cooked and ate a healthy dinner. I got to bed early, did a bit of crocheting because I totally have hobbies that I keep up with. Woke up early, went for a run, have already had at least 3 glasses of water, and now I'm ready to face you all with confidence and no anxiety whatsoever. So what I was going to do at this point was show you the meme that Monet just showed, which is overused, of that guy with the coffee, this little dog with the coffee cup. That's how I really feel, which is this is fine, but I took it out. Yeah, so I said the night before, and I just felt like, actually, like, this is too much. This is too overwhelming. And basically, to give you some context, I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2016. It was my first job in UX, and it was a kind of weird way that I got diagnosed, because basically it was very exciting. I knew nothing virtually about UX, and I realized we had a few like training sessions at the beginning, and I was falling asleep in them, which is horrifying, obviously, because also it was like my brand new manager and like 3 of us, and I kept falling asleep. And I went to my GP and I was like, what the hell? And she said, like, I think you are just too overwhelmed, and like your brain needs a bit of help right now. Why don't you try some Ritalin, which helped a lot. And then I went to a psychiatrist and got a proper diagnosis, and it all made sense. I did very well at school, but as things became less structured in university, I started having a more and more difficult time. And it was only at this point where I was, how old? 28, where I realized, where I finally came to this diagnosis, and I'll get to that. So it's only in the last 2 years, actually, really, that where I have done a lot of research, a lot of listening to audiobooks and reading things and podcasts and whatever, where I've learned a lot more about ADHD. I've learned more about it specifically to do with women also. And I've learned so much about myself. So a couple of days ago, I was just sitting there in exasperation, saying to my partner, Dan, like, I just don't know where to begin. And sometimes he does this really infuriating thing where he tells me something really simple and obvious that he doesn't realize is really brilliant, and it makes me really angry. He said, why don't you just talk about the things you've learned that have been meaningful and helped you to understand yourself? So I was like, yeah, obviously, that's totally what I was planning to do. Anyway, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you about some of the things that I experience. I'm going to do this also with a bunch of emojis, because I spent an hour obsessing yesterday over how to save a photo, a picture of an emoji, a memoji from my iPhone messages without having to send myself a message and screenshotting it. And I originally wanted to do it because my Slack picture was squashed and there's nothing I could do to like unsquash it. Anyway, this is ADHD talking to you right now. So then I realized there were a lot of actually really expressive things that sometimes I can't put in words that a little avatar can do. I'm just going to tell you a few things that I experienced, and hopefully with some facts along the way. So as I said, like I was feeling totally overwhelmed last night, and it felt too much. And I want to start off by saying, like, this is my most important takeaway. I'm doing things kind of backwards. It's like, this is the conclusion, that sometimes with ADHD especially, you have to forgive yourself. So I've forgiven myself for not putting everything I wanted to in here. And this is a very important point because, like, I want to talk about how ADHD is like a superpower and all these great strengths that we have, but also it can be a real struggle on a day-to-day basis. And that's really important to understand because the world is not created to accommodate those struggles. And there are days where like the ADHD wins. But as is the case with having ADHD or a similar condition, you start right over in the morning and you push through and you do talk with lots of emojis. There is this artist which I feel like you should look at. I feel like I could have just put this whole presentation together with her cartoons, called Danny Donovan. She does this stuff with, she does a lot of ADHD art. And this was one of my favorite things. It's okay to take a break, even if you don't think you deserve one. It's okay if you don't cross off every item on your to-do list. It's okay to not be productive every second of every day. You are a human, not a machine. It's okay. You're okay. So I'm hoping that there are a few possible things that you can get out of this. Different people can get out of this. One that maybe it's a little bit relatable, like people I know who've been diagnosed with it, especially late in life. In fact, I spoke to a friend yesterday who told me the very same thing. Like found out because somebody else was describing ADHD and they were like, that sounds like my life. And they went to a medical professional and got a diagnosis. And sometimes it's just good to know that like somebody else feels these things too. Maybe also you'll just find something interesting in this, or just marvel at my unbelievable awkwardness. And maybe you'll gain a little bit of empathy if you're someone who doesn't struggle with something like ADHD. What could be better for a virtual room full of people whose bread and butter is in the world of human-centered design? And number 3, maybe you'll see it as a design challenge. Like these are things we have to navigate every day in our lives. What are, like, you know, how can we come up with new solutions? I just want to put out a big disclaimer, because I'm full of disclaimers. I'm not a medical expert in any way. I have just read and listened to and looked at, excuse my language, a shitload of audiobooks and books and podcasts and TikToks. Like, the only thing I look at TikTok for is ADHD videos and dogs, and YouTube and websites and blogs. And I wish I could list them all, but I think maybe you'll have to contact me and I can give you lots of recommendations if you like. And it's also just my own experience. So a couple of basics. So ADHD there's basically three. It stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's not actually ADD officially, which a lot of people call it. And there are three subtypes. One is predominantly hyperactive, two predominantly inattentive. So predominantly hyperactive is kind of being more impulsive, kind of skipping through important steps, excessive talking, seeming to have boundless energy, difficulty controlling emotions, a lot of risk-taking. Predominantly inattentive is more characterized by being like easily distracted or like daydreaming, difficulty starting tasks, a lack of focus, misplacing things, forgetfulness, lack of attention to detail. And three is the combined type, or combinate type. That was an accident. And that is a combination. Also just want to point out that all of these characteristics, like, people will say, oh, well, everyone's a little bit ADHD, or but everybody procrastinates sometimes or loses their keys. But the important thing here is that it becomes something more when you're experiencing it on an everyday basis, to the point where these things intrude into your life. And so yeah, you lose your keys every now and then, walk into a room and you don't remember what you were looking for, whatever. But people with ADHD are kind of struggling with these things on a constant basis, and it's intrusive. And the flip side of that is also that that means that some of the things I'm going to talk about, if you don't have ADHD, you will also relate to that. So maybe there are things that you can learn too. So ADHD is basically, it's a neurological disorder. It's not really like a mental health issue exactly. And it is characterized by low levels of the neurotransmitters norepinephrine and dopamine. I won't go into all of that, but we're always looking for a dopamine hit. We need this. That's why stimulants like Ritalin help, because they provide that stimulation and that dopamine hit that we're looking for, so that we're not like distracted looking for other stimulation. And what's important is that ADHD brains also, it's about how we process all the sensory stimuli coming at us from every angle. So how all of our senses are reacting to the world around us and all the information. There's also executive functioning. This is very important. I can't go into a whole explanation about it. This is a really important guy, Dr. Russell Barkley. He wrote a very good book, I believe, which I tried to look at, didn't understand it, but it is a very important concept. My favorite part of this little video was the comments. Shout out to all my fellow ADHD homies reading through the comments, not listening to the video. Sorry, lost my place here. So executive function skills are basically the things that help us to plan and achieve goals and like self-regulate. So that includes things like proficient in adaptable thinking, planning, self-monitoring, like self-control, self-talk, how we talk to ourselves, working memory, time management, and organization. So given that, there's actually a lot of people don't refer to ADHD anymore as ADHD. There is this concept of neurodiversity, which is basically in opposition to like neurotypical brains, there are neurodiverse brains, and neurodiversity means that there's a deficit, there's just a diversity of the ways that people's brains are wired, and what those conditions generally consist of are, include ADHD, autism, dyslexia, sensory processing disorder, and a variety of things that are all related to kind of how we process all our information we're given and sensory overload. Some people also just call ADHD executive function disorder. And the thing is that there is no attention deficit. There's a lot of attention. It's just kind of misplaced and hard to put in the right place. The other important thing is that I realize I have a lot more material than time here. Anyway, something that's been really important to me is learning about history of ADHD and how it affects women. So there's a huge problem with underdiagnosis of women. Even now, most of the ADHD, most of the research that's been done has been done on like little hyperactive white boys, and that means that there isn't enough about adult ADHD. There certainly isn't enough about women with ADHD, and there's even less about ADHD in other minority groups, like or sorry, I'm speaking in an American way, in other groups like people of color, and that is a whole other thing that I won't try and get into now. So women are like terribly undiagnosed. If they're diagnosed, it's mostly later in life. Often they're misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder or having depression or anxiety, when actually the root cause is the ADHD. Women do a thing called masking often, or people do it, but often women do it. Society kind of expects you to behave in a certain way, so you learn how to behave in that way, but actually you are like struggling every day, thinking there is something wrong with you, and it's exhausting, and it creates a lot of shame because you're a lady, you got to be organized, you got to plan the meals, you got to normal things, and there's actually a lot of there's some pretty crazy statistics about how women with ADHD are a lot likelier to commit suicide than those without it, and there's a higher rate of eating disorders, things like that. So it's really a big issue. Okay, so the night before. Okay, so last night this is a situation. I'm looking at my screen, and then I realize I'm hungry. I haven't eaten all day, so I realize I don't have any food to make dinner. There's no leftovers, so I go into Mr. D. I decide to order a food, and then I can't get anything done before I get the food, so I might as well like try and find something to watch on the TV. I'm stressed, so I just want to watch something funny. I found some stand-up comedy. I realized I discovered Tiffany Haddish. I really like her comedy special, Black Mitzvah. And I was like, then I decided to Google Tiffany Haddish Jewish, and like she actually had a bat mitzvah. And then it's like, what is this about? Turns out her father is a Eritrean Jew. Then I went, by the way, I'm Jewish, so particularly interested in this. And I decided to look at like what is the history of Eritrean Jews. Most of them are actually like European Jews who immigrated there. But actually, Tiffany Haddish's father was one of the Ethiopian like Black Jews, but living in Ethiopia, living in Eritrea, and so like this is it. This is my ADHD. And then suddenly it's 3 a.m. and I am rushing to finish my slides. So I'm going to break this down with a couple of things. Firstly, out of sight, out of mind. When you see ADHD people being like having clutter around them, it's not clutter to me. There's something called object permanence. We do have object permanence. That's the idea that something exists because we can see it. But we do a lot of visual tracking. So I need to see my stuff around me. You see it as clutter. I see it as organized piles of all my stuff. My works, like the workspace, it looks messy. Something that has helped me is to actually create a kind of structured workspace where I have a keyboard and a mouse and all of that, and a computer stand. Something with the pandemic I've struggled with is this lack of distinction between work and home. And I need that structure. ADHD, like what's really good is like routines, rituals, structure. So yeah, just an example. I don't know if anyone else does this, but like pushing all the electronics to the side, mostly electronics. Also my ID book and some Spasmen because I hurt my back. My boyfriend sits down on the couch thinking we're going to have a nice little cuddle, but he's sitting on like 2 laptops and an iPad and like whatever else. I think it's fine because I've just pushed it over, so it's like there. I can see it. It's fine. Something that's helped is to have my own like clutter tray. So like I can have my clutter, but it's not in the communal space, but I have a space for it. The other thing is like getting things done. Like there's a lot of to-do list apps and stuff. I never look at them because I forget that they are there. What has really helped me to actually get things done is I have to have those visual things in front of me. So I was using like lots of bright stickies. Like have the bright stickies around me, then I can see what I have to do. Then I found these like little stickies that have lines, and this is what I do every day. I put this thing with a bunch of tasks. It's like grocery shopping. Respond to Laura, which I actually haven't done. I lied here just for the sake of this presentation. So that's something that helps a lot, and that's about like visual tracking, and you know, if I can see it, it exists. So work, okay, memory and communication. I have a terrible working memory. I did read all of those things, but tell me to repeat it without writing it all down, and I cannot. I will watch a movie and try to explain the plot and don't actually remember it. It's there. I just like can't find it. Like can't find the words. And as you'll see now, because I'm feeling a bit like anxious today and stressed, I do a lot of umming, and I can't find the words. I zone out for a second. Maybe it's good that I'm unprepared because this is actually like a real life display of my ADHD. So I zone out a bit. I do these little things like maybe it's good that I zoned out for a bit or whatever. So I go on tangents. It's that thing that like that stereotype people have about people with ADHD that's like, oh look, a squirrel, but I kind of do that. And there's also a communication thing where I'll land up blurting things out before I intended to, and it comes out the wrong way, or I interrupt. I'm very bad at that. I try to work out when is the best time to interrupt, like in a meeting, and I always get it wrong, and then I feel bad, and something I've had to work on a lot. I try to stick to the putting your hand up in a virtual meeting. Yeah, something that, okay, time. There are 2 times for people with ADHD, now and not now. Complicated by being South African, where you also have now and just now, which is like a kind of gray area. Time blindness is a real thing. So last night I look at the time, and it's 3 a.m. But I've been focusing. I've gone into like hyper focus mode, and I didn't realize how long it took. Something boring that's 5 minutes feels like 3 hours, and something that's really interesting and stimulating feels like 10 minutes, and it's actually been like 5 hours. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm late for everything. I try my hardest. What I try to do is like, don't tell me that I need to be somewhere at 7 p.m. Tell me I need to be there at 6:30 p.m. And deadlines. Totally don't know which of my employers are watching me now, but I swear I work on this all the time. Deadlines, it's hard to meet deadlines because of this now, not now thing. So only when it's like very urgent that, you know, that's when I'm most productive. But again, there are coping strategies for this. And then there's also this ADHD paralysis, which looks like I'm just being lazy, but actually in my head, I have all the things going on in my head and all the things I have to do, and then I can't manage, I can't handle like everything, so I'm stuck and I don't do anything. Focus and motivation. When I say finishing projects, for my employer's sake, I mean like hobbies. I've started lots of hobbies. I started some crocheting last year. I stayed up really late to make a perfect square, and I did it, and I never picked up to crochet needles again. I also have been wanting to get back into drawing, so I have bought every different kind of marker you can imagine, and then all the paper that I need to draw on it. Have I opened anything? No. Distractions. Having a workspace actually that has as few distractions as possible is the best, and it's so easy. It's easy to get distracted. Hyper focus, as I said, like with that time blindness, like I can go into like crazy focus mode. So again, it's not, ADHD is not about being distracted all the time. You can focus really hard. It's just focusing on the right things at the right times. Being impulsive, online shopping, no thank you. Procrastination, and stimulation in terms of being motivated to do something. If it's boring or something we don't want to do, it feels almost impossible. Food, like people have a lot of difficulty with planning meals, organizing everything. A lot of women develop eating disorders. Also, medication can be like an appetite suppressant. This is also particularly difficult for women who are like mothers, who have to organize everything for the household, because we know that women often have a second career at home. And emotional dysregulation, which is just like, I can have a complete freak out at something small, or when I feel overwhelmed, I feel overwhelmed. And I might feel suddenly angry at something. Something that I've been told helps is meditation. I know it helps. I'm just not very good at it. And there are different ways of doing that. Maybe going for a bike ride or something is your kind of meditation. And sleep. There's a lot of sleep issues that people with ADHD have, and that includes so the variety of sleep disorders. They're not completely clear on how the two are connected, but basically, I'm not just a night owl. My body doesn't want to go to sleep at a normal time, and he does not want to wake up in the morning. something that's good for that to help wake you up is having sunlight and having a good routine. Okay, I'm almost definitely out of time, but I'm going to just flip through these slides quickly. Something important that was like actually the crux of this talk is that all of these things, all of these struggles with ADHD can be flipped on their heads. So hyperactive, distractible, impulsive. This is also Danny Donovan again. A lot of this is where creative people and the design industry really thrive. It means you're a problem solver, you're empathetic, you are creative, curious, think of new ideas, inventive, all of these things. And then the one thing just to mention, I've mentioned my employers, like people ask about like disclosure. Should they disclose it to their employers? And this has to do with a lot of stigma around it, because it's the kind of condition where like it's the opposite of what you want to appear like at work. It's like not working properly or missing deadlines, you look lazy or disorganized or whatever. I'm not an expert on this, but you disclose as much as is comfortable for you. Like, you know yourself, you know your employers, and like you're the expert of your brain. Yeah. Okay. I swear, I'm going to just flip through these slides. There's some really interesting things being done. That's just some food for thought, but go and look some of these up. There's some really cool things being done, designed around ADHD, but more generally with neurodiversity. And this is a lot of it is around sensory design. Again, it's about how we, how our senses process all the information we're getting. So there are these snoozelen rooms. They were developed in the Netherlands, and they're all over the world now. And they use like light and color and all these things to help people with autism, ADHD, other developmental conditions, using all these things to actually stimulate them and to actually create different feelings. Look it up. Spatial computing. There is this woman whose name I've gone, Silke. I want to say Meeseeks, but it's definitely not Meeseeks. I think it's Meeseeks. Sorry. She is the head of emerging design at Adobe, and she has dyslexia, and she has gone on a whole thing about sensory design and designing beyond the senses, beyond visual design. So in a digital sense, this means like 3D design, means like augmented reality, but in a very interesting way. Like, I could move around, or you could see some birds move, and that translates into words or something. That's a very bad explanation. It's super interesting. Look it up. And then this is a school in Israel that was designed for ADHD children in mind. So the furniture, the spaces, like a minimal design, all created to help children with ADHD. And then on some websites, you'll just see these like accessibility things, and often there's this ADHD friendly thing, which actually allows you to focus just on whatever area you're looking at, which is pretty cool. It would be cool to see more things like this. Yeah, I have a lot of resources that I'd like to recommend. You can email me, contact me on Twitter or Instagram, which I don't often look at, but I will if you message me. Yeah, so that was a live display of my ADHD. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that live display, but also for the braveness to share that information and also the insightful information. There's a good few comments I would suggest you maybe read through, some relating comments, but also just generally awesome comments. I'm just going to drop your Twitter handle in the comments Oh my goodness. And we've got one question from Christopher. Kate, thank you for your talk and the sharing of your experiences with ADHD. Really appreciate it. I have a question. What kind of things do you look for from an experience or service that help you to complete your user journeys in your personal capacity?
Gosh, where do I begin? I guess it depends on what I'm looking at. I do go into, this is an ADHD thing also, but I get into like an obsessive mode where when I'm looking for something, so I'll download every single to-do list app and go through all of those, and I find the things that work for me best, and then I use it for like 3 days and don't use it again. Try and think of an example. I recently tried to, I don't know if they're like general principles exactly, but things that are going to, something really important is things that are going to make things more convenient. So there might be things that like are not like the most visually pleasing or whatever, but for my memory and for my like executive functioning, if it's something that makes things easier, it's better. And I can also just be like the layout of the home. If I'm not going to throw things away properly, have a dustbin in the lounge where I can just throw things away. Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing is like, what will this product actually help me to do? How will it make things more convenient? That's like the most important thing to me. There's some cool things like for productivity, also for specific kind of symptoms or whatever, like you can use a Pomodoro timer if you work, you need to take breaks. It times you for like work like 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. So yeah, something that will help me with structure, convenience, routine. Yeah, I'm not sure that really answers it, but yeah.
Thank you.
That's what I got.
No, I don't see any more questions.